Hello, welcome to Board Game TV, and we're back discussing the Ghost Rider comic book series, and this will be the final video for Series 2. And this is going to be a rough video. I'm going to say a lot of cruel things, I'm going to say a lot of frank things, be brutally honest, and well, that's because I love this character. And I was frankly heartbroken by the turn of events with this. So, Ivan Valdez Jr. took over the book on issue 70. Now, Salvador LaRocca was still doing the art, and this is probably the lowest point, the worst run of any Ghost Rider series ever done. This was terrible. This was a unmitigated train wreck. I remember when Ivan Valdez took over, and let's not get mince words here. You know, Howard Mackey writing and the direction he had taken Ghost Rider and his final little run there had been lacking somewhat, but this takes it to a whole new level. So Ivan Valdez Jr., I didn't know of him. I only knew that he wrote for DC. DC started a Milestone line of comics. It was basically a bunch of minority characters written by minority people in an attempt to diversify their comics. And of course, you know, this is the early 90s and it had a whole gangster rap type flavor and all that kind of stuff. Of course, the series didn't go over too well. Even with a crossover with main DC characters, the series just didn't go over too well. Because, you know, it was, nobody seemed to like it. I can't judge it because I never read any of them. I had no interest in reading any of them. The advertisements for it looked frankly stupid. And, but I know it didn't last. So eventually, I guess Ivan Valdez made his way to Marvel Comics. And I don't know what deal was, if they thought he was actually a good writer or if he was just some sort of diversity hire or what. And I don't know why they put him in charge of Ghost Rider. Did they just say, okay, here, we hired you because you're a diversity hire, we're just going to put you on a book that's waning, we don't care about it? Or did he pitch good ideas to them and they genuinely wanted him to turn the book around with these new and fresh ideas? I don't know. There's been some controversy about that because a lot of writers have tried to undo what Ivan did, because he basically, among many other things, just trashed the continuity of the Ghost Rider. The continuity of Ghost Rider was pretty stable even with the whole Medallion of Power thing until Ivan Valdez came along and kind of ruined it up by trying to retell a new origin story for Ghost Rider, which we didn't need. And that kind of put a wrench in things for a long time, and it still kind of does if you look at the continuity. It's always the thing that doesn't fit and makes things just not make sense. You know, it used to be I waited with bated breath every month for the Ghost Rider comic book, but now it got to the point during his writing period that I was like, ugh, bated breath for every month to see if he'd got removed from the comic or, you know, or just, yeah, other than that, it was just like, I'll read it later. It just hurt to read it. It started becoming a slog. And the art would get worse when Salvador LaRocca would leave. The art would just go really downhill. And Ghost Rider would hit a low point that it really never has ever hit before. And you're talking about getting knocked out of the top 100 in sales every month. I mean, it was bad. And, you know, he came on and he changed the whole thing of the book, but it was like he had never read a Ghost Rider story before or read anything that Howard Mackey had done before. It was just horrible writing. The first thing he did was he got Dan Ketch, moved him out of his mom's and put him in Brooklyn Queens or something and put him in college. So you had Dan Ketch and actually collecting a Social Security check, living in a little crappy apartment someplace away from his family, going to college. Why all of a sudden he has this thing to go to college, I don't know. He never showed an interest in that before. And it even has him talking about can't wait for his Social Security check to come in, and he's paying with his food with pennies, and he's going to classes and stuff like that. Of course, Sal introduces basically a new cast of characters, local people from the neighborhood, fellow students, and of course the friend, the girl that he meets up with in class and becomes friends with is of course a lesbian, and she's got to mention it every other page. Also, the stereotypes he writes for a lot of the Hispanic people and the black people in the comic book. If a white person had wrote those people like that, you'd be thinking, see, he just wrote them a stereotypical a minority. But I guess since he was a minority, it was like, yeah, that's true. That's how they really speak. Because a white person couldn't get away with writing minorities like that the way he did. It was bad. Another thing he did was he screwed up characters. And what I mean by that is he came up with some new villains of his own, but he also brought back some villains that were established in the Ghost Rider comics. As you can see, he brought back Snowblind. He brought back Anton Hellgate, and Hellgate was kind of a main one for a little bit. And Scarecrow and Blackheart were the four main ones. And for Blackheart, he wrote him like a literal mustache twirling villain. I mean, he wrote him so terribly, it was just awful. It was just, I mean, literally Blackheart was just a mustache twirling villain. I mean, gone was the whole psychological thing where Blackheart wanted to kill his father and was really kind of messed up from that and all the rage. He was just now literally a mustache twirling villain, talking about all these grand plans he has and this kind of stuff, and then just acting goofy. The Scarecrow, who was once Ghost Rider's arguably most favorite villain, and sure, he had been a little bit overexposed and watered down a little bit in the end times of Mackey's run, but he still had that psychological thing where you knew he had been abused by his mother and was literally crazy, and you still kind of felt a little sorry for him. Well, now he's being written like a cartoon character, going around with his pitchfork calling it Trusty Rusty, and I gotta get blood for my Trusty Rusty. He's nothing like the Scarecrow we had before. Snowblind, who was a cold and calculating drug lord, is now kind of really a egotistical buffoon. And Anton Elgate, who had a real silent menace to him, is now making quips and jokes and just all around nothing like he was originally came off to be. He's not menacing anymore. It's just like he's like poor man's mob boss who's just spouting off stupid things like, next time I make you, I'm going to make you different, or make you without a mouth, and all this kind of stuff about his underlings. It was just it just got real bad. He messed up Vengeance. You know, Vengeance had so much potential, and as we're going to talk about in a minute, he just messed him up and basically almost ruined his character. And then of course there's Ghost Rider's new look, as you can see right there. For whatever reason, that's who he changed Ghost Rider's look. He had Ghost Rider's look changed to that, and Ghost Rider was riding around basically on a neon pink bike. for no real reason. And that didn't last that long. People got really sick of it, and they made Ghost Rider go back to his original look. It was just awful. It was a bad, bad time. And, man, and it was really sad. I mean, it was really, I knew the writing was on the wall, and I knew the end was coming, because it was just really sad. And this was not anything. I mean, you take your favorite comic book character and a new writer comes along and just trashes everything that had been done before, and none of the characters act like the characters you knew. I mean, that's just bad writing. So let's get into what goes on under the reign of Ivan Valdez Jr. The first big storyline that he takes on is Hellgate is back. And he has his usual superpowered underlings with him, Rack and Dread, who were in Howard Mackey's run, who had fought Vengeance. A new female one, and Snowblind. And of course, Hellgate's making a move to take over all the criminal organizations on the East Coast or whatever. And he of course wants to take down Ghost Rider as well. But there's something going on. Somebody is killing mobsters and burning them alive and leaving their charred bodies for display, and of course riding in blood, no penance or something like that. Of course, our number one suspect is Ghost Rider, and everybody's starting to think Ghost Rider's gone crazy and is doing this. I mean, look at that. That's horrible. Look at that, Ghost Rider. That's horrible. God, that's terrible. So, Stacy starts to believe he's doing it, and Johnny Blaze comes back into the picture and believes he's doing it, and is going to try to put a stop to him. Well, of course, Hellgate thinks he's doing it and is trying to put a stop to him. So there's this big fight between Ghost Rider and Snowblind and Hellgate and all them, and nothing really gets resolved. But everybody really comes to learn that it's not Ghost Rider that's doing it, it's Vengeance. Apparently, Baldino... Now, take in mind that Baldino had dealt with childhood trauma of his father killing his mother. He was a Special Forces veteran, so he'd seen plenty of death overseas with the U.S. military. He was a veteran cop, and he had seen plenty of death as a police officer, and he was Vengeance for a brief time and seen, you know, even killed people when he first turned into Vengeance, and was very brutal. But apparently, while working a case and trying to track down Hellgate, he found a place where Hellgate had stored, or the hand had somehow gotten involved and killed a bunch of people, and there were a bunch of dead bodies in the building, and Vengeance Baldino just went nuts at that point. Murdered basically his whole strike team except for one lady, and was now going around killing mobsters. Oops. Sorry about that. So, Vengeance has lost control, but he's got a nifty new outfit, and it looks stupid. He has a big V on his belt buckle. Okay? They changed his look, and he's got a big V on his belt buckle. So anyways, he's going to try to kill Hellgate and the whole group. Ghost Rider and all them are trying to stop him. Blah, 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 blah. What ends up happening is of course, Vengeance fights Ghost Rider, and they kind of beat him, but he goes to Hellgate and all his men, and Vengeance basically explodes, killing Hellgate and Snowblind and Dread and Rack and everybody. And supposedly that's the end of Vengeance, it's the end of Hellgate, that's the end of Snowblind, that's the end of everybody. So that leads into our next storyline. Now, when Ghost Rider and Vengeance were fighting, Ghost Rider gave Vengeance the penance stare. And he saw something of himself in that penance stare. And memories from way back when. Think colonial days. And those memories being unleashed set loose these furies. And these furies come and try to kill Ghost Rider. But Ghost Rider is suffering like a fever now because of those memories. So they take him to Doctor Strange. Okay? To try to figure out what's wrong with him. Doctor Strange figures out that he's had some memories suppressed. The Ghost Rider's had memories suppressed or something like that. For whatever reason, because he was involved in a killing of somebody he loved or something a long time ago. But instead of helping him out, Doctor Strange passes off the chore of helping him out to Jennifer Kell, who is a superhero, mystic type superhero, but she, was not real known much. She had a little, I think, heyday maybe in the 70s or something. And Johnny Blaze needs her help to find his missing children. Now, it's unclear of what happens with this, because if you remember at the end of the Blaze series, Blaze reunites with his kidnapped missing children. So either Ivan did not read the Blaze series, or they were thinking the Blaze series was just so damn bad they're just going to ignore it. So your guess is as good as to what happened. But nonetheless, Blaze needs Jennifer Kell's help to help find his missing children, and Ghost Rider needs her help to figure out his memories and what's going on and why these Furies are after to kill him. So the Furies try to kill him, but of course they ended up getting stopped. But in order to do that, Ghost Rider needs to change into his brand new outfit. And that's when he changes into his neon outfit and has his neon motorcycle. And oh boy. So there we go. And then after that, for some reason the book decides to have Howard the Duck guest star and Devil Dinosaur and Moon Boy guest star, and Jennifer Kell's got to get them back to their own dimension. And now I know Ghost Rider has really jumped the shark when Howard the Duck is in an issue with him and Devil Dinosaur and Moon Boy. It's just really starting to get off the wall, batshit crazy, and it's nothing compared to the greatness that this comic once was. So once they get the Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur thing solved, we start to learn of the continuity breaking origin of Ghost Rider. And I'm going to try to explain this the best I can. And it just gives me a headache thinking about it. So here it goes. Okay, there's a guy named Noble Kell. He was in love, and this is colonial times. He was in love with a foreign girl. I don't know if she was black or Hispanic or what, Magda or whatever her name was. His father disapproved of it, basically because he was a white racist. He had Magda killed, and he made Noble basically watch, or Magda thought that Noble had a part in her death. He burned her alive or something on the stake. Accused her of a witch and burned her alive on the stake. She called down these Furies to take vengeance, and of course Noble Kell's dad was a secret Satanist. Even though he was supposed to be a preacher, he was a secret Satanist and worshipped Mephisto. And basically he bargained for a little help from Mephisto to spare him from the Furies. And basically what happened was an angel felt pity for Noble. So he merged the angel of death to Noble Kell's soul and kind of blocked his memories, because if Noble can't remember her dying, I guess the Furies don't know he had anything to do with it. Like I said, it's a real convoluted. But anyways, it stops the Furies. He does some kind of spell or blocks it, whatever, and they stop the Furies from being able to find Noble Kell and kill him. Noble Kell's spirit is merged with the Angel of Death and becomes the Ghost Rider. And now it is this Ghost Rider that has possessed Dan Ketch. So all this time, this Ghost Rider, who he thought was Zarathos, was never Zarathos. He's actually been Noble Kell. And where the Medallion of Power fits into this origin, I have no idea. It makes no sense, because we were led to believe that Danny had pieces of the Medallion of Power in him, and that is why he became the Ghost Rider. Okay, that's why he had this power. But now, thanks to Ivan Valdez, it's a little new origin which we didn't need. Actually, Danny is possessed by the spirit of one of his ancestors, Noble Kell, and why when he touched the motorcycle, it all of a sudden appeared. It never explains. It never really explains. It's just a terrible thing that doesn't make no sense and really breaks continuity. Later on, other writers would try to, in other series, try to fix this. So, I guess you can look at it as like, maybe like Mephisto used Zarathos to try to tap into the Medallion of Power for Johnny Blaze. Maybe Noble Kell was inside Dan Ketch and he still always had the Medallion of Power. Who knows? So, apparently, though, Dan Ketch's, or Johnny Blaze's mother, Naomi Ketch, was possessed by him as well when she was a Ghost Rider. And you come to find this out in a flashback issue. And what that is every Marvel comic for 1 month they did this flashback thing where every comic was -1. And it was a flashback issue. It was like a prelude back to like before the series started. And that was basically the Ketch lady, Danny and Johnny's mother. Because Danny, remember, he's adopted. Being the Ghost Rider, and there's the flashback issue right there. Alright, she was the Ghost Rider before even Johnny Blaze was. Caretaker knew about her. She's being hunted. She ends up dying, and the bike that she has is the bike that she dies in the junkyard, and the bike that she has just gets put there into the junkyard. It's basically Mephisto and his demons are chasing her. They've been chasing her. She's so weak, and if she transforms one more time into Ghost Rider, she's gonna die. She ends up transforming into Ghost Rider to fight off the demons, but in the end it ends up killing her. So she's buried in that junkyard, and that bike is there, and then that we're supposed to take that. That's the bike that Danny Ketch touched in issue 1, and that's how he turns into the Ghost Rider. But apparently the Ghost Rider that she and both Danny have become was actually the Noble Kell Ghost Rider. It's crazy. I know it's just really confusing. So there's that. That's that storyline. Okay, then off to the next storyline, where the Scarecrow, thanks to Deathwatch, thanks to Blackheart, can now possess people. And he possesses Danny Ketch, and they expel him, And then he possesses Barbara Ketch's dead body, who somehow has been resurrected back by Blackheart, and they end up beating that back. And Scarecrow is at his most horribly goofy, stupidest during this storyline. Storyline really serves no purpose. Alright, at this point in time, the book had really fallen to just hot garbage. I mean, I think it was really the new origin story, which was really what kind of broke me with that. Of all the things to do, because I'm a big stickler for continuity. I just am. And everything. And especially my comic books. And the Medallion of Power thing, the way Howard Mackie did it, it did jive with the first series. But this kind of throws a wrench into it all, and nothing jives now. Okay, it doesn't make any sense. So, it was at that point that it really kind of pissed me off. And I had lost all hope in really, a Ghost Rider comic book would come out, I'd buy it, and I wouldn't even read it at that point in time. I just would read something else. Ghost Rider went from being my all-time favorite comic book to, I'll read it later on, let me read these other books before it. So, we start having a new storyline building up, where Blackheart is now getting people and making deals with them to be kind of like his lieutenants. He gets this lady Wallow, who basically is I think she's a Chinese immigrant who is being smuggled over on a boat and gets treated harshly and abused and basically wants to kill herself, and Blackheart comes and turns her into Wallow right there. Okay, so there's Wallow. The next lieutenant he gets is this guy named Doghead. Now, Doghead you will see later on in another series. So he's one of the few you need to take to note. Basically, it's this guy who loves his dog, and something happens, an accident happens, and the dog dies, and he dies, and Blackheart offers to, save him if he becomes his lieutenant, and he does. So he becomes Doghead. He has the head of the dead dog, and that kind of personality. So, and it's a little weird, to say the least. Then old Paula makes an appearance. Now her and Danny have kind of been on a break. Blackheart gets her and turns her into one of his lieutenants. And then there's this last lieutenant, I think the Black Rose or whatever her name is. But you don't know who she is. That's kind of like a big mystery. You don't know who she is. And then there's this rat guy villain that Ghost Rider, who in World War I, when there was a Ghost Rider around World War I, fought and destroyed back at that time, and Blackheart kind of brings him back. Okay, so Blackheart's big plan is he offers the spirit Noble Kale, and I guess everybody at this point knows the whole thing with Noble Kale now. He offers him to become his big servant. If he does so, he'll free Dan Ketch of the curse, and he'll actually marry him to the two women. One of them is Pauline, and the other one is the Black Rose lady. And he promises to not have any type of involvement and do things and leave the Ketch family alone, and just basically quit being a menace. Of course, this is some kind of weird trap, but Noble agrees to it. And so basically what happens is that, and we also see that Vengeance is in hell being tortured. Okay, so there's that. So what basically happens is Noble outwits Blackheart, and he kills Blackheart and marries the two women. Well, he only actually marries the one of them that used to be Pauline or whatever, or the whatever he marries one of them. And there's Black Rose right there, okay? And it turns out that he figured out that that is Roxanne Simpson. Yes, Blackheart turned Roxanne Simpson, or resurrected her and turned her into Blackheart. So basically, Noble Kell gets separated from Dan Ketch. Johnny Blaze never finds his kids. Noble Kell becomes the new King of Hell. And Mary, like I said, marries one of the females. And then Noble Kell comes to Earth and restores Black Rose's memories, and she remembers she's Johnny Blaze's wife, Roxanne, and Johnny Blaze and her reunite and have a happy ending. Okay, and Dan Ketch is freed from the curse of the Ghost Rider and is able to live a normal life, and Noble Kell is King of Hell, but he leaves to go do more work and leaves Vengeance in charge of Hell while he's gone. And that is basically what happens. They hint around that Mephisto will eventually come back and reclaim it, but that's the most they do with it. Now, and then the series ends. Now, in one of the most egregious things ever committed by Marvel Comics, in my mind, is it made me quit buying their comics for a long time. As silly as that storyline sounds, it was actually Ivan Valdez's best run on the book, The Last Temptation storyline. And it was actually a little interesting and readable again. I'm not saying it's the greatest storyline that ever came about, but I am just saying that it was an interesting storyline. I'm not saying it was great. It may not even be good, but for Valdez it was actually good, and the storyline was actually interesting. And it was also, that began in issue 90, and that was the issue that Ghost Rider went back to looking like Ghost Rider. They changed his costume back. Now, before we get into this egregious thing, I want to say one other thing real quick, and that's about the artist. Okay? And you've seen some of these covers, and you've seen some of the horrible art these covers have. And that's because Salvador LaRocca left at issue 81. I mean, you don't want to keep a top-notch artist on a book that's just dying and become a dumpster fire. And Marvel took him off the book. And of course, he would go on to do bigger and better things. I think mainly with Wolverine and stuff like that. So artist Pop Man took over at issue 82. And Pop Man's art was horrible. It was like somebody just threw up on the pages. It was terrible. Why they thought this art style was going to work for something like Ghost Rider was just beyond me. I mean, it was just bad. It didn't even, you couldn't even make a coherent picture with it. It was so bad. But they touted him and said, hey, you're going to love him. And yeah, it was god awful. This was actually the truest low point for Ghost Rider ever. Issue 82, 83, and 84. The story was just horrid and the art was just downright terrible. And he also issued 86. He did issue 86 as well. And then apparently he was gone from the book. Okay, I think they finally realized, boy, the people aren't liking this art style. And I remember reading back in the letter pages, man, people just didn't like this art style, especially with the neon right there. I mean, the neon Ghost Rider and everything with this new art style was terrible. So, it became kind of like a revolving door for a little bit with the artist. Gabe Alexander, or Aldero, I'm sorry, Gabe Aldero, did the art. That's Pop Man's art right there. That's his art. And like I said, it's bad. That's his art right there. That's Pop Man's art. It did not fit with the book. It just was terrible. I mean, this looks horrible. Gabe Alberola, whatever. I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name. Did the art for issue 85. Pop Man returned for issue 86, and then was gone from the book. Because that right there does not look like Ghost Rider. That is Pop Man's art, and it just doesn't fit with the jive of the Ghost Rider. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Carl Kroschel came on, did issue 87. Josh Hood came on and did issue 88. And all three of those artists weren't really that good. They didn't fit the style. And so the book was just gone downhill. However, something happened which made me think that Marvel wanted to do one last ditch attempt to try to save the book. And that was they brought Javier Saltaires back. The original Ghost Rider artist came back. He came back for the flashback issue, and then came back for the Last Temptation storyline, which is issue 90, which is where they got Ghost Rider back in his old look. And immediately when that happened, I started to get a little bit more positivity about the book. I said, well, Javier's back. Great. The art's going to get better now. Maybe the story will seem to get a little bit better. Ivan Valdez seems to be getting a little bit better with the story, with this Last Temptation storyline, putting him back in his regular costume. It seems to be just getting a little interesting. And now we have Saltaires back. It's great. And Saltaires did the book to the end, issue 94. And another thing that boosted me up was Tex came back to be the inker on issue 92. So it was like you had the original Ghost Rider artist together again doing the Ghost Rider book. And at that point in time, I started having hope. I was like, alright, man, if we can just get rid of Valdez, or he can really turn around his writing, this book will make it to 100. This book will bounce back. You had two great artists that brought this book into original prominence, working on it. It can start moving in the right direction. And it kind of did. The Last Temptation storyline lasted from issues 91 to 94, and then abruptly the book got canceled. However, Marvel did not print issue 94. The last printed issue of Ghost Rider was issue 93, which left you hanging on a cliffhanger. I mean, it literally left you hanging on the cliffhanger. It literally ends with Noble Kill being crowned the King of Hell, and all hail the King, and you see these red eyes in the background looking menacingly as to what's going on. And we never got another issue 94. Now imagine my rage and frustration. And not only did we not get an issue 94, we were never told we were going to get issue 94. As a matter of fact, at the end of issue 93, it says next, the end, the finale. And we never get that issue. It doesn't appear. Imagine my rage and frustration. Imagine you have a favorite TV show and it's going on its final season, and the last episode never airs, and the episode before it leaves you on a cliffhanger, and they say, hey, tune in next week for the final episode, and it never airs, and they never tell you it's not going to air, and that's what happens. Marvel was wrong for what they did for that, and that really made me so mad at Marvel. I stopped buying comics from them. And I remember for months I was like, when the hell is issue 94 coming out? When is issue 94 coming out? Well, it never came out. I stopped buying Marvel and strictly was buying DC at the time. Now, according to Marvel, this is kind of what happened. Remember, this is 1998. So Marvel filing for bankruptcy because, you know, the bubble had burst on the comic book era. And the way they do it, the way they say it is, well, a judge basically told them that unless the comic book is going to make money, don't print it. Now, they had issue 94 done, but they never printed the issue. It may have been mostly done. There was only a few parts left, and they decided not to print the issue. And you're like, what? I know, it's crazy, and it's a big disservice to your fan base. I don't care what a judge says. You don't do that. Okay. So, as you can see, for a long time, nobody really ever knew how this once great series, which was very popular, nobody knew how it ended. No fans knew how it ended. And it wasn't until the year 2007, almost a decade later, that Marvel would correct this mistake when Ghost Rider is getting popular again because the movie's coming out and they're coming out with a new Ghost Rider series, and print that issue right there you see before you. Almost a decade. Now, to their credit, they did it. They printed that issue. I remember when I found out that they were printing it, I definitely snatched it up because a new Ghost Rider series was fixing to come out because of the Ghost Rider movie, and that's a video for another time. And so to kind of say, hey, I'm sorry, we screwed up, to the fans, they printed out that issue and they sold it, and it's basically issues 93 and 94 together in one issue, and then a few interviews with Saltaires and a few of the other creative people behind Ghost Rider, and of course a big promo pop for the new Ghost Rider series coming out. So yeah, that's Marvel for you. Now, would they have done this with something like a Spider-Man comic? Hell no, they wouldn't have done it with a Spider-Man comic. They wouldn't have done it with a X-Men comic or anything like that. I don't care what a judge had said to them, what they say a judge had said to them, they wouldn't have done that with that. They would have printed the issue. But, you know, maybe my rudimentary understanding doesn't quite get it, and maybe my anger blinds me, but yeah, I'm still mad about it to this day a little bit. So that was a wrong thing to do. So for a rabid fan of Ghost Rider for 10 years, you never knew what happened. Now, after issue 93 came out, and apparently the people at Marvel knew they weren't going to be printing an issue 94, Howard Mackie was writing Spider-Man at that time. He was writing Peter Parker Spider-Man. And issue 93 of Peter Parker Spider-Man, ironically, Howard Mackie tried to address and try to fix this, which this issue came out a couple months after the Ghost Rider issue 93. And the issue guest stars Ghost Rider. And it's basically Noble Kell appears out from hell to try to save the city from these terrorists that are going to blow up, set off this bomb to blow up, and it's going to kill a bunch of innocent people. And Noble Kell comes to Earth to stop it, but he's not right. He's not strong because doesn't have a human host, and he keeps blabbering about Mephisto lies, Blackheart lies, blah blah blah. Well, anyway, Spider-Man's trying to help him get it together and everything of that nature. And Dan Ketch comes running up out of the crowd and is like, look, what's going on? You know, what's going on with you and everything? And he basically merges back with Noble Kell and becomes the Ghost Rider again. And of course they destroy the bomb and save the day, and then they kind of like ride off into the sunset. Of course, that's not really considered canon anymore because of what happened in issue 94 when it was published nearly 10 years later. But for a long time, that was it. And it wasn't something that was publicized. You had to actually go out and look for this to find out that this happened. And so if you were not a collector of Peter Parker Spider-Man, you never would have known, because they never told anybody about it. So it's kind of really considered non-canon because of what happens later on in further series, and kind of what happens with issue 94, because issue 94 kind of debunks what happens in that end of Peter Parker Spider-Man, about Noble having to have like a human host with him, if that makes any sense. And of course, no other Marvel Comics acknowledged that Blackheart or Mephisto were dead and Noble Kell was the King of Hell now. Nobody acknowledged that. As far as all the other Marvel comics were going, Mephisto was still alive and the actual King of Hell. So there you go. And so, an abrupt end to a once great series. And this was a low point for a Ghost Rider fan. The last basically, I don't know, damn near 2 years of the book. While the first 2 years were some of the greatest stories and greatest issues of Ghost Rider ever put to print, the last few years of this series were just horrible and the actual worst beyond belief. It was just bad. And you never knew if a new Ghost Rider series was going to come around at that point in time. I mean, being abruptly canceled where they didn't even print the last issue, it just, you didn't know what to do. You didn't know what to think about a company that did that. I certainly didn't trust Marvel after that, and I was proved right by that from later on actions down the line. And it was sad to see Danny Ketch go that way. It was sad to see a once great series. I mean, this series was 8 years for me, 90 to 98, and I was a teenager in high school when the series started, and then when it ended, I was basically a grown man in a career job, and this book had helped me get through many trials and tribulations I had during those formidable years and during the 90s, which was a crazy time in itself. And it really hurt. It hit me hard with what happened to the book, and it just really bothered me how piss poor writing can come along and just destroy everything that had been worked for the past couple years, and bad decisions by the comic book companies in general. But I don't want to rant anymore on it. That is the history of Ghost Rider finishing up Series 2. And it's actually going to get even worse before it gets better. Next video, we're going to be taking a look at 3 miniseries for Ghost Rider that bridge the gap between the second series and the third Ghost Rider series. So I hope to see you then. Until then, have fun.